Hi, this is Mary Greendale, and it's campaign season. Candidates are starting to be interviewed, and I want you to understand that when I interview these candidates, I am asking each candidate for an office the same questions. They get the questions in advance, they can prepare, and then we go through them. I have found this to be a good way to get a sense of how people respond to the questions in substance, and also how they differ between one candidate to another. The other thing, for candidates that are not opposed, I do not do interviews, but if they are brand new to town government, I do. And I do so because I believe that people have the right to know who's running their town government. And so we meet them, we talk to them, and we ask them a series of questions that's appropriate for their town office. So you will be able to watch these interviews at your leisure, and keep an eye out for them, and let's get going.
Welcome to Just Thinking. I'm Chryso Lawless, sitting in for Mary Greendale. Today we're doing select board candidate interviews for the two people running for this position. Town election day is May 25th. This show is your opportunity to evaluate the substance of the candidates as they answer questions. Both people have received the same questions ahead of this interview, and each interview is approximately 30 minutes. Holliston Reporter will also be publishing statements for each candidate. I'm pleased to welcome the incumbent select board member, John Cronin. Hi, John.
Good afternoon, Chryso. Nice to be here. How are you?
I'm great. Could you briefly tell us about yourself, including your professional background and how long you've lived here and any other offices you've held in town?
Sure. So again, my name's John Cronin. I've lived in Holliston since 1993, so we're coming up on 28 years. Professionally, I've been a public manager for the last 32 years. For the last several years, I've been with the Department of State Police, now with the Department of Correction, as an administrative services director. I oversee fiscal operations, facility operations, technology operations, and contract obligations. From a professional standpoint, I find public service to be very rewarding. You get a chance to develop policies that have an impact on people's lives in a way that I feel is very meaningful. So I've really enjoyed not only serving in my professional capacity, but also locally. And just very briefly there, I was first involved with town politics in 1997 when I was elected to the Finance Committee. I became chairman by the year 2000. I served one term. I had a younger family at the time, so I pivoted to less strenuous opportunities. I did some time on the Golf Course Advisory Committee, and then started on the Board of Assessors around 2005 or 2006, where I served, I think, a total of 5 terms. During that time, I also provided service in the form of search committees for police chief on 2 occasions and the town administrator. I've been on the board, select board now for finishing up my first term of 3 years, looking for another 3-year term.
What makes you want to do another 3-year term? It seems like you've had a lot of experience all over town, and this could be a good culmination, but why again?
So it's a good question. I think what you have to realize, and a lot of people understand this, is that when you serve in town, men with grand ideas, but the day-to-day functions of town government, demands placed on services, this frequently takes the priority and gets in the way of your own agenda or your own ideas. I came in trying to push for a smarter way to develop an infrastructure, public infrastructure improvements in Holliston. And you have to recognize that 3 years isn't quite long enough, Chris. So you need more time to see through those initiatives. And that's what I intend to do. In the first 3-year term, we were able to get studies committed by the town to look at these initiatives. We hope to see those studies sometime this fall, and then begin working on solutions to fund them and initiate some progress towards improving our water infrastructure, our sidewalk infrastructure, and so forth.
Actually, what are the top infrastructure or improvements that you would like to see by the end of this next term of 3 years? Can you
So
expand on what you just said?
Sure. I think the top ones, in order, I guess you would say, would be the water pipe replacement program. Currently, all rate users pay a surcharge to help the town fund 1 mile of water pipe replacement per year. The town has about 60 miles of water pipe in our ground at various stages of degradation. A lot of it has been there for many decades. Working with our DPW director early on, we determined that our plan to do 1 mile a year was, while it was something, it was not a deliberate plan to tackle the project in a reasonable amount of time. So we sought to sort of amplify our efforts and look at a study that could possibly step up that replacement plan to 3 miles per year. And that way we could reasonably expect that within 20 years, our entire infrastructure would be upgraded. And at the same time, we'd be looking at sidewalk infrastructure. Holliston is a neighborhood-driven community. Many of the neighborhoods were built up over different time periods. The infrastructure to connect those neighborhoods to our downtown, our rail trail, and our other recreational outlets wasn't really well planned. So we're looking through this study to have a sidewalk infrastructure plan that would complement, Chryso, the work that would be done to replace the water pipes. Going to rip up a street, that's the time to start planning for sidewalk infrastructure. In addition, there are 2 other items. We are waiting for a well water study, which will help us source our next water source for the coming years. Those processes usually take many years for a well water source to be certified and brought online. This will be the beginning of that. And then finally, this spring, we're going to see an article to bring forth a study for a new Department of Public Works building. Both our Central Street and DPW facilities are well past useful life. You can check out the website. A report has been given by our facility manager that shows how decrepit those environments are. We desire a singular facility where both groups can come together and gain efficiencies in the work they do in a modern workplace that can take care of equipment that the taxpayers pay so much for. So those would be it. They all fall under the infrastructure umbrella, but the plans are underway, and I look forward, hopefully, to being reelected so I can see them through.
I know you talked a little bit about your skills or experience, but what specific skills do you personally bring to this post?
So I think the first thing that comes to mind is my fiscal skills. I was trained as a fiscal officer with the Commonwealth. I understand budgets quite well. As I mentioned, I served on the finance committee, and I understand our budget in Holliston very well. Over the last 3 years, we've worked with the town administrator and the finance committee to develop balanced budgets for the town to consider. I think as we look at these infrastructure projects, you have to recognize they're going to cost money. So I hope that my fiscal skills will be able to help the town and the committees and boards that will be responsible for weighing in on these projects to see a path towards getting them done, or getting them done to at least some scale that benefits the community. So I would answer your question in short: fiscal skills, because at the end of the day, taxpayers expect some value for their dollars, and I intend to help them get that.
What are the 3 most important functions of the select board in your mind?
Yeah, I like this question a lot because I think, folks, including myself, think they understand what the select board is all about. But as the top executive agency in the town, it takes on a different dimension. Our meetings get a lot of special focus. So to answer your question, I'd start by saying the first thing you need to do is to remember who you work for. And it's hard because you're drawn in a lot of different directions with ideas and agendas, but at the end of the day, we work for the citizens. And it sounds a little corny to say it, but I constantly remind myself, the citizens are the bosses. And I'll get emails from people saying, thank you so much for helping with something. And at the end of the day, I tell them, that's my job. My job is to help you resolve whatever problems you might have and address them. So I think it's important that any candidate know that the boss is the citizen, the resident of Holliston. The second one I would say is listening. We spend a lot of time on our board every week taking in information from all different corners. Since the COVID pandemic, we're listening a lot to Chief Cassidy give us public health and CARES updates for our community. Listening is a skill that allows us to take in information that then becomes actionable. And that can come in the form of a follow-up meeting or a direction to the town administrator to get more information for us to make good decisions. The last item I would recommend as a quality that a candidate needs is creativity. It takes some energy to understand how government works in Holliston, and using the creativity angle of your skill set allows you to think outside the box and start looking for resources in other departments, or perhaps even other communities or state resources to achieve a goal. We frequently, for example, are talking about regionalized services. We're looking for creative ways to save money. We always source information from outside Holliston to find out how we're pairing up with our neighboring communities. So the creative use of thinking, I think, is something that keeps us fresh and thinking in a way that I think secures the best value for the tax dollars that Holliston spends, but at the same time keeps us cutting edge. We get to understand what other communities are doing as well.
Could you give me another example of a solid example of creativity that you've done?
I think the most creative thing that we've done is really started to work with the town of Medway on a commercial vehicle exclusion. As folks may know, our board tackled a chronic issue of facing many streets in Holliston. I think there were a total of 5 or 6 that were being impacted by commercial vehicle traffic. And over the years, there's been attempts by past boards to deal with the problem. But we recognized that this was going to be a long game, Chris. So it was going to involve state lawmakers, including Senator Spilka's office, Rep. Dykman's office, as well as state agencies with MassDOT. But when we approached the South Street issue, we recognized that we were likely going to encounter some concerns with abutting communities, as we have in the past. And to avoid that, we creatively reached out to Medway, who has been a great partner on this project. And we came upon a very willing town manager, Mike Boynton, who said right out of the gate, we're with you. Clark Street connects to South Street. We want to join your application for MassDOT. So that application was just filed within the last few weeks. It is strengthened by the creative use and the creative partnership with Medway that I'm sure when MassDOT receives, they'll find it to be airtight and ready for approval. So I think that's probably the best example. And it took a long time. You have to stay with it, but it seems to be bearing fruit so far.
What's your biggest concern for Holliston for the next 10 years?
I would say water management. It constantly comes up as something that past boards and others in our community view as a critical resource that we must protect. Water quality has become more and more of a concern for communities from the state and federal levels down. We've all heard about PFAS and other areas of well water contaminants that we have to guard against. I think we've got a very good infrastructure, but Holliston has had to confront some expenditures, large expenditures, to treat water that is coming into our homes. We've heard loud and clear from many residents for a long time suffering most, if not all of those concerns, Chris. That's of a bigger issue, which is if we're not delivering quality water to the residents, we're failing to meet a basic form of our obligation. So I would say over the next 10 years, we've got to take care of our infrastructure. We've got to replace those pipes, and we've got to make sure that the water flowing into the community households is high quality and safe.
How will you measure your own success after this term? What's been your, for the second term? You talked about your first term, and how at the end of your second term, what will you measure your success by?
Well, as somebody once said, I think it was my father, leave something better than you found it. So that's the first test. Hopefully that will be achieved in the form of a couple of things. I'd like to see these studies that we've invested in provide Holliston a roadmap for those infrastructure improvements. We will know that hopefully within a year. So if I'm reelected, I'll have 3 years to see through a plan that can hopefully be initiated and underway for us to say, the town is on the right track for water pipe replacement, sidewalk infrastructure, well water sources. and a modern Department of Public Works that can serve our needs. Those are tangible ways for me to measure whether or not I'll leave it better than I found it. But those are the things I'll be staring at. In addition, I'm hoping that by then, Holliston's governance would have evolved into a more seamless, efficient model. We need to really constantly look at the way we're governing ourselves to make sure that we're meeting the residents' expectations for service and using technology to its maximum benefit while saving taxpayers money. So those things will be on the forefront of my agenda over the next 3 years, if reelected.
This is kind of a wish list question. COVID-related federal funds might be available to us, and there might be some restrictions on its use. But regardless of restrictions, what would be your priority on spending this windfall if it comes about?
Well, it's shaping up to be quite a large award, Chris. So we should know more in the next month or so what the American Recovery Act will yield for Holliston. But planning on a large number coming our way in the scope that grant will provide to us. Clearly, we're looking at infrastructure projects, shovel-ready projects that can be that we can use this federal grant money for to save on our taxpayer dollar investments, whether that's from a water enterprise fund, a capital fund, or what have you. So I'd say the first task would be evaluating what projects are ready to match the grant's purpose. I'm also very interested to see how Holliston can leverage what is viewed to be broadband investment as part of the ARPA grant. I've asked our town administrator to begin a dialogue with the technology director to evaluate how we could use that technology funding to improve the citizens' experience in Holliston with respect to internet speed, but also perhaps some innovative use of the technology to create cafes or areas where small businesses can thrive. It's an area that I've recently begun to hear a lot more about from citizens that we met over the weekend. There's a strong interest in making sure that people locally have a strong technology internet connection to make their businesses thrive. So I'm going to look at those two prongs as areas that the ARPA grant can really yield long-term benefits for our residents.
What are you most proud of as far as your tenure so far?
I didn't have to think too long on that question. It's clearly the hire of our new town administrator. I believe bringing Travis Ahern aboard was transformative. Travis has exceptionally strong financial skills, skills that I have not seen before in a municipal leader. He's got a very creative and surprisingly for a young man, he's got a lot of experience from the communities he's bringing to ours. He's a very good hire that's going to yield tremendous benefits for the town down the road. When you have a strong municipal leader like Travis, you can really lean on him to begin working on initiatives and projects that take time, but with his help, we've already seen a tremendous change in the way our board functions. I think the select board has a very good vibe right now. We are in sync. We are progressing. We are really pushing forward initiatives that benefit the town. And I have to say, none of this is possible without a strong hire like Travis. So clearly he's I would say in the first 3 years, my proudest vote.
How would you describe to a citizen the ideal relationship between the town administrator and a select board? This is a kind of a off the cuff question, but I think you can answer it.
Sure. So a select board is a volunteer group. We all have our ideas. We are independent of each other. And because of open meeting, we can't caucus. We can't have our sidebar conversations. So a town administrator acts as the glue for those ideas. They run town government effectively from town hall. But the connection with the select board is critical when you're off camera. So much happens between Tuesday morning and the following Monday evening. The town administrator informs the board of ongoing concerns, frequently call us ahead of time with information that's critical to the inside story. A good town administrator is making my job easier. I can show up Monday night. I am fully informed. My peers are fully informed, and we can thoughtfully deliberate on issues with all of the information in front of us. That's just a simple example. But beyond that, project management, collaboration with other boards, including the school department, certainly finance committee, planning board. Our town administrator is busy working with those boards to derive information, share information for the benefit of all the projects that are ongoing. A good example right now would be the 555 Hopping Brook project. The select board does not have an actionable vote on that item, but we're fully informed. We have made our town council available to the planning board during the last several months to allow the town collectively and through our town administrator to monitor, assist, and support the planning board. And it's very heavy work going on right now. So a good TA allows all of that happen without really so much of a hint of a problem. And it's been a pleasure working with him. He's an exceptionally strong town administrator, and I look forward to years of service from him.
Thanks. I think that's a great way for our citizens to be informed about the relationship between people that you might not understand unless you really follow town government. So,
Right.
John, your final pitch. Why do you, for yourself, what do you want people to know? What do you want to take away from our conversation?
Well, first of all, I want them to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to give us this forum. I really think that folks who view the select board as a place to come for any of their concerns understand that if reelected, I promise to always be their advocate. As I mentioned earlier, I know who I work for, and I take that seriously. As a public servant in my professional life, I understand the value of public service and how much of a privilege it is to have that. Over the next several years, if reelected, I promise to move forward on the agenda items we've mentioned here, Chryso. But there's a part of this that really didn't come into our interview that much, and it's really the continuation of leadership. A board that has continuous turnover is not a board that is in sync and progressing as a unit for the betterment of our town. If reelected, I'll serve another term. I'll provide continuing leadership on the initiatives that we talked about. And I think that's critical to the success of what we're trying to achieve. At the end of the day, citizens elect us to get things done and not to abandon them. So I'm hoping that folks understand that my service is one that hopes to see through the initiatives that we started, and that through the continued leadership and participation of the select board, I promise to continue the good work of our board, which I think again is hitting on all cylinders with a new town administrator. We've got some really great things coming up, and I look forward to it.
John, thank you very much. And we hope that this interview will help the citizens make an informed voter decision when they go to the polls on May 25th. For Just Thinking, this is Chryso Lawless.